I'm going to make a quick introduction for us. So our panel is convened by myself, Yaku Renken, Professor Richard Heeks, and Epifania Kimaro from the Centre for Digital Development in Manchester. And we have, for a couple of years now, been working on this topic of digital development leadership, or more broadly speaking, issues around leaders and leadership within development, particularly as it relates to initiatives that involve digital technologies, how those technologies influence leadership and how leadership influences the role of digital technologies within development. It is a very small but very promising area of research, and particularly in the time where we are at the moment, as we know so well, we've seen it firsthand, how technology plays such a key role in disruptive times like this, but also in disrupting the times. We know leadership is so important to bring the necessary action, to address the wicked problems that we sit with, that we are passionate about solving within the development environment. Poverty, inequality, ineffectiveness of the state, and all sorts of man-made and natural disasters. And we also know that these problems aren't simple. They are complex, wicked problems, and they involve economical and political and social and cultural elements and processes. And therefore, this is a wide open field to ask how leadership plays a role in all of this, particularly from a digital side. What are the implications of leadership? And so some work has been done on this already, and we are continuing to seek those who are able to bring connections of leadership and the framing of leadership to their work, and that's what was really leading us in framing the call for papers for this panel. We've received more than a dozen papers initially, all addressing this aspect in more or a lesser extent, and what we've proceeded to do is to select 4 papers for us today that would tackle this issue of leadership from various angles. Some of them are facing leadership straight on within the digital context, and some other papers have applied a leadership lens to look at their research on various topics, as you will see shortly and enjoy, to see and open up this can, as it were, of issues around leadership and the importance thereof. Like I said, there's lots of more work to be done, but this is where we are. I going to briefly show you the papers we've got lined up. And so there are 4 papers. We are not going to follow them in exact order this morning because we are having some colleagues just having difficulty in connecting and bandwidth and tech problems and so on. But we'll proceed in the meantime. We've got a paper from Mawazo Magesa and Joan Jonathan from Tanzania on digital leadership. We have the next one there from Smoya Das and Badishra Chaudhry. These are colleagues from India, IIT in Bangalore, and they are going to look at the role of leadership in the adoption of digital banking infrastructure from an ethnographic perspective in public sector retail banking in India. And then we have a paper from Pradeep Kumar Misra on leadership capacity building for sustainable digital initiatives in higher education, also in India. And finally, we have a paper from Atsuku Okuda from the United Nations University, who will be looking at e-governance and anti-corruption in Bhutan, 2 initiatives over there, and with a view of looking at the importance of leadership, multi-layered leadership within those initiatives and their outcomes. I'm going to get us going straight away by inviting my colleague Pradeep onto the podium, and we're just going to get his presentation ready and give him the opportunity to share with us his paper on leadership capacity building.
Very good afternoon to you all from India. I am Pradeep Kumar Mishra. I work as Professor of Education in George Chand Singh University. This is a state-supported university in India. It's in district of Meerut and state of Uttar Pradesh. And this university, my university, is near to Delhi, about 80 to 90 kilometers away. So if you are coming to Delhi, you have a good chance to meet me, and I hope that soon you will visit India and Delhi. So the title of my paper is Leadership Capacity Building for Sustainable Digital Initiatives in the Higher Education Sector in India, Need, Challenges and Strategies. I am focusing this paper mainly on higher education sector, although digital leadership is required in different sectors of life, but I am focusing this paper on higher education sector. Next slide, please. Okay, so I assume that most of you are familiar with India. You know lot of facts about India, but so I am reminding a few facts, and this will help you to understand my presentation in a better way. So the population of India is 1.35 billion, and the most important thing is that 50% of this population is below the age of 25 and 65% is below the age of 35. So we can say, or you can say, that India is a nation of youths. We have 36 states and union territories. Among these 36, 28 are states and 8 are union territories. So, like I told, that I belong to state of Uttar Pradesh. And we have a number of languages. India is a big country, diverse country. We have different geographical, cultural diversities, and we have 22 official languages and thousands of dialects. And these 22 official languages include Hindi and English as well. So, and English, you can say, a kind of national languages, or and the other are regional languages, but there are 22 official languages in India. So I am giving you a perspective to imagine how big our country is in terms of population. As I told, that I belong to the state of Uttar Pradesh, and the population of the state of Uttar Pradesh is 230 million. And then there are three big countries in European continent: UK, France, and Germany. And if I am adding the population of UK with France, with Germany, then the total population of these three countries is 206 million, and the population of my state is 230 million. So you can imagine one state having more population than the three biggest state of European countries. So you can understand that India is a very big country in terms of population, geographical diversities, language diversities, cultural diversities. But the good thing that India is a democratic country, and we are emerging as well. Thank you. Then next slide, please. Yes. So now I'm coming to higher education sector in India, because I am focusing this presentation on higher education sector. So it will be useful for you to have some understanding about higher education system in India. The present data reveals that at present we have 993 universities and many more are coming. We have 51,649 colleges, and colleges means in these colleges the undergraduate and postgraduate programs are running, and in some colleges research is going as well. We have 37.4 million students in higher education sector, 1.4 million teacher, and our gross enrollment ratio is 26.3%. And government of India is looking forward to increase this gross enrollment ratio up to 30%, and then after some time up to 35%. So of course we will come up with more universities and with more colleges, more students and more teachers. And so what is the main challenge in higher education sector in India is to providing quality higher education at affordable rates for every aspirant, because not everyone is so rich, and people are living in remote areas, in rural areas. So providing quality higher education to each and everyone, we are is a challenge. Is a challenge, and government of India is trying must to overcome this challenge, and it has been seen that digital technologies can be a viable solution for this. And there is an issue triangle in higher education in India. We call it access, equity, and quality, and it has been seen that digital technologies can help a large number of population to access equity and quality, to bring access, equity, and quality in higher education. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. Uh, in recent years, government of India has taken up number of digital initiatives, and I have listed some of them. And these are hyperlinked. So if you are watching my presentation, after that you can click this and you can go to the relevant site. There is a platform, we call it Swayam, and this platform is a platform where different courses ranging from school to higher education are available. You can enroll in these courses, even you can enroll in these courses, and you don't have to pay anything. Only you have to pay a small fee if you are willing to take examination. So this is a digital platform, and a number of courses from different subjects at different levels are available for free of cost, and you can join these courses. Then we in India we also have a program named Swayam Prabha. This is a bouquet of 32 free direct to home channels. So there are different educational channels related to school education, teacher education, women education, and many more. So you can watch these channels on your television set without going anywhere, and they telecast program every day. We also have National Digital Library. This digital library offers e-content in different regional and national languages, and you can access this content. Then there is a program NPTEL, National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning, and under this program, a number of courses related to engineering, core science, and other disciplines are available, and you can join these courses. And this program is particularly meant for those students who are living in remote areas and not able to go to mainstream institutions. They can access these courses and take advice of experts in the field. And then we have a program named eSod Sindhu, and this is a consortium for e-resources in higher education. You can access a number of journals, reports, and many more materials related to higher education, and these are available in e-form. So anybody from anywhere can access these resources. And then we have a platform named Shodh Ganga. This is a reservoir of Indian theses. And so this is mandatory for in now. This is mandatory in India. So if you are conducting any research, you have to submit a e version of your thesis in this repository. So a number of theses, Indian theses, are available in this repository, and anyone can access it. Then we have PG Pathshala. PG is postgraduate Pathshala in Hindi. In Pathshala in Hindi, and in English it's means school. So EPG Pathshala, in EPG Pathshala there are a number of curriculum based interactive e-content are available for students of higher education. And then there's another very good initiative called Virtual Lab, and these virtual labs are remote access labs, and so students from different disciplines of science and engineering can perform experiment by visiting these labs, and they don't need to come to these labs. They can do it virtually. So you can see, and these are few initiatives. There are many more. So you can say in a way that higher education sector in India have taken a number of digital initiatives, but the main challenge is we are not able to fully utilize the potential of these digital initiatives. And my argument is that digital leadership is going to help us to fully utilize the potential of these digital initiatives, and as well as digital leadership is going to help us to get access, equity, and qualities higher education. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. I see digital leadership through my view regarding digital leadership in higher education is, in my view, digital leadership is a process of social influence. I view it as a process of social influence because leadership is a proper process of social influence. So digital leadership is also a process of social influence, and it serves two purposes. First, maximizing the collaborative efforts of different stakeholders to digitally transform the institution. Digital leadership help us to maximize the efforts, not only our effort, individual effort, but collaborative efforts of different stakeholders. And when I am talking about different stakeholders, means teachers, parents, student, administrator, policymaker. There are so many stakeholders, and so maximizing the collaborative efforts of different stakeholders to digitally transform the institution, not only to transform the institution, but digitally transform the institution. And digital leadership is also helpful to promoting a culture for sustainable use of digital technologies to support the teaching and learning process. When I say sustainable use means as user I have to know that what technology I'm going to use it, how I am going to use it, what is good about it, what is not good about it. So digital leadership can help us to promote a culture of sustainable use of digital technologies. Then, in my view, digital leadership is supposed to, suppose we bring digital leadership in our institution. So, what will be its role? Its role will be to bring transformation in terms of content, pedagogy, and technology. I have already discussed, we have number of programs, but they are mainly relying on content part. Pedagogy part is missing. So bring transformation in terms of content, pedagogy, and technology to make digital initiative an integral part of teaching, learning, and assessment culture of the institution. So far, digital technologies are not an integral part of the teaching, learning, and assessment culture of the institution. I think that digital leadership is going to help us to make digital initiative an integral part of the teaching, learning, and assessment culture of the institution. Next slide, please. uh, why we need digital leaders in higher education sector. Why I'm advocating for that? My advocacy is based on these 5 points. In my view, digital we need digital leadership to bring change in the mindset of the stakeholder to accept, to appreciate, and judiciously use digital technologies. Yes, a number of technologies are available, a number of initiatives have been taken, but still we still lacking mindset to accept and appreciate these. Sometimes we see technologies as rival to us. So if we have digital leaders, they will help us to change our mindset and will bring a culture of accepting, appreciating, and judiciously using digital technology. So this will be the first role, or we can say role of digital leaders in the higher education sector. Digital leaders are also going to help us to harness the creativity and innovation of student and teacher to get the best use of digital technology. We are using digital technology, no doubt, but we are not using it in very creative and innovative way. So suppose there will be digital leaders, they will help us to use it, and not only use it in a creative and innovative way, and this will certainly be beneficial for higher education sector in many terms. Then the third role of digital leaders will be to assessing the technical requirements and ensure the availability of required digital tools and software. There are a number of institutions in India. Every institution has different requirements, different uh, needs, different purposes. So assessing the need and purposes and the objective of the institution, and assessing the technical requirements, and then ensuring the availability of required digital tools and software will be quite easy if the institution will have a digital leader. Then the fourth, and this is very important, that digital leadership will also help us to develop a culture of cooperative and collaborative use of digital tools and means. The good thing about technologies is that technology help us to work in a cooperative and collaborative way, and digital leadership will help us to develop a culture of cooperative and collaborative use of digital tools and means. We are using this sending platform, and so this is a wonderful example of cooperative and collaborative use of digital tools and means. But this platform, I can say that this platform was developed under the leadership of someone. So this type of leadership will help us to come up with these type of platform for cooperative and collaborative use of digital tools and means in higher education. And the last and very important role of digital leaders will be to promoting a community of digital practices. These are very important community of digital practices where people will come together, they will advise each other, they will support each other, they will train each other, and they will evaluate each other. But the role of digital leadership will be to promoting these community of digital practices. So I can say, so if we are going to have digital leaders, they are going to help us in many ways, and I think this will be helpful for higher education sector. But this is not easy. Developing digital leadership in the higher education sector is not easy. When I was writing this paper and searching a literature about digital leadership in India, so I didn't find so much material on it. So digital leadership is not a very must talk term in India now, and digital leadership in the higher education sector is a relatively new term, I can say. So there are a lot of challenges. I foresee a number of challenges in the path of digital leadership in the higher education sector. The first challenge is digital technologies are still not part of the core scheme of the higher education sector. Yes, digital technologies, we are using digital technologies, and during COVID times, the use of digital technologies has increased. A number of teachers and students are taking part in digital technology related activities, but digital technologies are still not part of the core scheme. So the first challenge for regarding bringing digital leadership, when digital technologies are not part of the core scheme, then why we need digital leaders? So this will be a first challenge. Then the second is concept of digital leadership is not practiced much in the higher education sector. As I told, this is a new concept. So digital leadership, maybe in private institution or in corporate sector, we are thinking or we are listening about digital leadership, but we are not listening much about digital leadership in the higher education sector. So this will be a challenge. And then authorities and practitioners are still apprehensive about the use of digital technology. So sometimes, yes, they are accepting it slowly, and they are accepting technology slowly, and I assume that they will still be apprehensive about digital leadership. And the fourth and very important is who will who will finance. Securing financial assistance and social support to practice digital leadership will be a challenge, because a lot of institution in India having financial crunch, and so getting financial assistance as well as social support for digital leadership will be a challenge. And the most important thing is that convincing present leadership to accept and promote digital leadership. So no leader want a parallel leadership, and so maybe some leaders will think that, okay, if this digital leadership will come, it will be a threat to me. So this thought of a parallel leadership will be a challenge. So the path is not rosy. There are many challenges, but we can overcome it. Next slide, please. Uh, when I was thinking about this, I formulated five strategies. So how higher education sector in India can practice digital leadership and come up with the concept of digital leadership. So I formulated five strategies. My first strategy is select a digital leader of the institution through open competition. Usually, the practice in higher education sector in India, if we would like to assign any responsibility to anyone, either the uh, leader of the institution or the executive committee of the institution decides and then gives this responsibility to the person. So, but in my view, because digital leadership is a specialized job, so universities or higher education institution can publish a call, and they can invite an open competition, and they can select the candidate through open competition. And so this open competition, if a candidate will be selected through open competition on the basis of merit, so this will be good for the institution. And then once we selected a digital leader, my second strategy is authorize the selected leader to pick up a team, because a digital leader will not be able to do anything alone. He or she will need a lot of cooperation and support from other members of the institution. So he or she will be authorized, allowing he or she will be authorized to pick up a team, and also he or she will need permission to take appropriate decision. So my second strategy is authorize the selected leader to pick up a team and take appropriate decision. The third is support selected leader to develop a digital policy of the institution and implement. Not many higher education institutions in India have a digital policy. So I think one of the most important tasks for any digital leader uh, will be to formulate a digital policy of the institution, and he or she will need that of support from the institution to develop and implement this policy, and therefore providing support to selected leader to develop a digital policy of the institution and implement will be third strategy. Fourth, providing opportunities and financial support to digital leaders to get professional training. Technologies change at a rapid pace, and so digital leadership will need training and retraining to get acquainted with these technologies. And of course, they will need opportunities and financial support to get involved in this type of training opportunities. So my fourth strategy is providing opportunities and financial support to digital leaders to get professional training. And the last one is higher education sector needs to sponsor researches on digital leadership. Not much research on digital leadership is happening here, and I thank the panel organizers for bringing this issue. So, sponsor researches on digital leadership and using the results to improve policies and practices will be my fifth strategy. So, in nutshell, I can say that higher education sector is an emerging sector in India, and I can say the destiny of higher education, this destiny of India, more or less shaped in higher education institutions. There are a number of digital initiative in India at this moment, but we are not able to fully reap the benefits of these digital initiatives. And if we come up with the concept of digital leadership, if in every higher education institution we have a digital leadership, then we will be able to reap the dividends of these efforts. And I can say that there are a number of challenges in the path of this digital leadership, but we have strategies, and if we have a will, we can implement digital leadership in our institution in a very improved manner. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you for coming and joining this session and listening me. It will be my pleasure to answer your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradeep, for that. Really interesting to see some contextual issues over there. I'd like to. We have a little bit of time for maybe a question or two. If the audience can just indicate by raising your hand if you want to ask Pradeep a question. Please do that. While they're doing that, Pradeep, I just want to ask one question on your strategies that you suggest. You have built those 4 points on the notion of selecting digital leaders. May I just ask for a brief comment about why selecting, and how do you figure that would be the right kind of approach to get leaders going? If you can respond to that, we have a hand up, and I will get another person after you've responded.
When I use the term selective, it doesn't mean that we have to select from outside. We can select from our own institution, but it will be through an open competition. There will be a call, and if anybody is interested, have expertise, then they can put up their candidature, and then they will be selected. It doesn't mean that we have to hire someone from outside. It will be from our own institution as well.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience, Sunali Baneriji. I'm going to put her on the podium since this is a small panel. Great. Sonali, if you could just unmute yourself there from the University of Sussex, and please proceed with your question.
Hi. Sorry, let me just turn my video on. Can everyone hear me? Thank you so much, Pradeep. That conversation was very interesting. The talk was very interesting. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more. It was very comprehensive about kind of what sorts of higher education digital programs are needed, and how they can be kind of successfully chosen and implemented. But I was wondering a little bit more, as probably a lot of us here in the audience are involved in teaching, and probably you are too. And especially in the last few months, we've all had to move teaching online and had to familiarize ourselves with the digital higher education experience. So I'm just wondering what sorts of inequalities there might be in terms of the student-facing side of things, because obviously, in a lot of ways, digital higher education programs and platforms are actually meant to be more inclusive for the students, so that they don't have to travel to university, they don't have to pay lots of fees, all these sorts of things. But I didn't quite catch that in your presentation, whether there was kind of issues and challenges that you foresee about inclusiveness for the students. Are certain sectors of students going to be left out because they don't have access to the right equipment, the right technology, the right high quality Wi-Fi, for example? So maybe if you could speak a little bit about that from the student perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The good thing is that during COVID, we have realized that we can use technologies. Every institution is organizing webinar and thousands of people are interacting and gathering. So now we have a faith that we can use technology, first thing. Fortunately, in India, mobile reached to almost everyone. And the cost of data also came down. And now we are offering data with voice. So the earlier this was the issue, we don't have a laptop or the data or something. So now almost everybody is having a mobile in his or her pocket. And most of these mobiles are with data. So I can say, as an educationist, I can say technology is almost reached to everyone, maybe 80%, 90%, and hopefully 100% of the population. But as educationists, I think we are not taking the full potential of ICT in education. We are just using ICT as a tool. So if we would like to make it more collaborative, more innovative, and more, we are just using you can say just for listening purpose, maybe for understanding or for creating, collaborating. That's why we need digital leaders. We need, and you were talking about inclusiveness. So if we have a digital leader in the institution, he or she will look after all these issues. A comprehensive policy will be made, difficulties will be solved, innovative use of technology will be assured. So this will be good. We have reached the first level. We are somehow able to give technology. So everybody is having access to technology. But are we using it in the right way, in a creative way, in a collaborative way? No. So we need digital leaders for that. And this is my basic argument behind this paper.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pradeep. We are shortly going to move to the next paper. Just as a last comment, I want to ask whether you have any thoughts on potential negative consequences or impacts of leadership within the digital realm or digital on leadership while we get the next presentation ready.
Jaco, very simple answer. Every leader is good or bad. So if he or she is doing his responsibility in a right way, he or she is a good leader. So same applies to the digital leaders as well. If they are doing their responsibilities in a nice way, they will be good leader. Otherwise, they will be a bad leader as well.
Okay, right.
Thank you, Jaco, Richard, and Fenia. Thank you so much for giving me this
a virtual applause there, Pradeep. Thank you very much.
Namaskar.
Great stuff. Colleagues, we are going to skip through our papers as we're still having connection problems with some of our other presenters. But fortunately, one of our papers offered us a pre-recorded presentation, as it were, specifically to mitigate these circumstances, and also because she was uncertain about her availability today. But I'd like to welcome Atsuku Okuda from United Nations University. She has a set of neat slides for us, which I will load straight away. And then we have her presentation as an audio recorded file, although Atsuku is in our audience and she will be able to, if possible, we will be able to ask her some questions towards the end of her presentation. So please stay tuned. I encourage you to raise your hand for those questions. It seems to be working quite well. I'm going to disappear for a moment, and then we'll have her presentation via the audio channel.
Good morning. My name is Atsuko Okuda. I am a research fellow at the United Nations University Maastricht Economic and Social Research Institute on Innovation and Technology. Today I'm going to present the preliminary findings of my research on the topic of e-governance and anti-corruption in the case of Bhutan and multi-layered leadership which emerged from my research. Next slide, please. E-governance has been increasingly seen as a vehicle to tackle corruption worldwide. But how and in what conditions that happens is not systematically investigated, especially in the developing country context. Based on the literature review, leadership was identified as one of the key drivers for successful implementation of e-governance initiatives in anti-corruption efforts. In this context, my research applied compliance among government users as a mechanism to explain the phenomena. In the case of Bhutan, multi-layered leadership emerged as key to ensure compliance and successful implementation of e-governance initiatives. Next slide, please. In this context, the research question is, what are the determinants of compliance among government employee users in e-governance implementation? My research aims at finding the determinants of compliance as highlighted in red on the slide. Next slide, please. This is an inductive, exploratory research based on constructivist, interpretivist approach. It is a comparative case study based on a purposive selection of cases in a purposefully selected country. Next slide, please. The criteria used for the selection of the country was control of corruption of the Worldwide Governance Indicator, UN DSA e-Government Survey 2016 ranking, implementation of e-governance initiatives for at least 5 years, and the likelihood of compliant cases, on top of the language and accessibility to the country. Next slide, please. For this research, Bhutan was selected as the case study country which meets all the criteria. Despite being a Himalayan, landlocked, least developed country with constitutional monarchy, Bhutan was ranked 25th in the 2018 Transparency International's Corruption Perception Survey among nearly 200 countries. Next slide, please. The cases were selected from the Bhutan e-Government Master Plan of 2014 based on the relevance to anti-corruption efforts and the use by government officials, among other criteria. Out of the 30 initiatives, the online asset declaration system of the Anti-Corruption Commission and the electronic public expenditure management system of the Ministry of Finance were selected. Next slide, please. The online asset declaration system was developed as part of the ACC's anti-corruption efforts. Although embezzlement and financial frauds are relatively rare in Bhutan, ACC has identified an increase in policy corruption, nepotism, and favoritism as characteristics of Bhutan's corruption landscape. Next slide, please. In this context, the system was developed originally in 2006 and went through several upgrades. It aims to detect and deter illicit enrichment, build transparency and public trust, and manage conflict of interest, which could be a cause of policy corruption, nepotism, and favoritism. Next slide, please. The system covers a large number of government officials CSO and corporation leaders for a small population of 750,000. The Schedule 1 officials include ministers, head of army, monastic bodies, and corporations, while the Schedule 2 covers lower-ranking government officials with substantive and financial responsibilities. As the tables show, both Schedule 1 and 2 government officials demonstrated a high level of compliance, which gradually improved over the years. Next slide, please. Another system my research is investigating is the EPEMS of the Ministry of Finance. The system was launched in July 2019 as an enhancement to the previous system called PEMS and manages the disbursement of Bhutan's government funds. The EPEMS was developed partly due to the audit observations and World Bank recommendations related to system gaps and irregularities. Next slide, please. More specifically, EPEMS eliminated the checks as a payment instrument, enable electronic payments between government and banks, and significantly improved payroll and other payments among different parties. Despite the initial rollout challenges, the system has been functioning as the main platform for public expenditure management and disbursement with high compliance among government users since its launching in July last year. Next slide, please. For this research, I conducted semi-structured interviews among 33 government officials, CSO, and private sector representatives and experts from September 2019 to January 2020. The interviews, document analysis, and observations resulted in 1. Information system descriptions, 2. Evidence of compliance, and 3. Expert views for triangulation. The data analysis is currently conducted through coding, pattern matching, and cross-case synthesis. Next slide, please. One of the emerging patterns from the preliminary analysis is the multi-layered leadership as possible determinants of compliance among government employee users in implementing e-governance initiatives in the overall framework of the country's anti-corruption efforts. The layers include 1. Monarchy and Prime Minister, 2. Ministers and secretaries, 3. ACC and media, and 4. Sectoral and functional government officials. Next slide, please. The respect to His Majesty the King and Prime Minister as the head of government appear in almost all interview transcripts. In particular, the speech of His Majesty on the importance of tackling corruption seems to have become a reference point in shaping the opinions and behaviors of government employee users. Next slide, please. As to the roles of ministers and secretaries, unlike in the traditional policy and decision-making processes, it appears that their roles are mainly promotional, advocacy, and supportive in providing required resources and political will to ensure the success of the initiatives. Next slide, please. Relatedly, the role of ACC and media have been mentioned as important determinants of compliance. ACC is generally respected and feared at the same time by the interviewees, while social media and print media have been functioning as whistleblowers in society. Next slide, please. What may be one of the most striking features in the case of Bhutan is the strong horizontal networks among government officials of occupational groups such as IT officers, finance officers, HR officers, and so on. Some of the groups have a parent ministry where the group members officially and unofficially report to. In the case of IT officers, Regardless of their official and vertical reporting to ministries and agencies, IT officials also report to the Ministry of Information and Communication. This parenting arrangement seems to function as additional oversight and compliance driver among government employee users and supplement the vertical hierarchy which exists. This arrangement seems particularly effective in implementing e-governance initiatives which require frequent technical and functional changes to the system. The updates to policy and regulations take time, while all the changes are regularly implemented. And therefore, the user manual has become the de facto policy for that particular function in question, and the multi-layered leadership may enable the government employee users to comply. The next slide, please. In conclusion, the preliminary findings of this research identified an evolving type and role of leadership in the implementation of e-governance initiative in Bhutan. This horizontal and functional networks and more traditional vertical hierarchy, as well as multi-layered and multi-dimensional leaderships, seem effective in the dynamically evolving e-governance implementation, where the changes are frequently introduced and at the same time ensuring the compliance among the government employee users. In the absence of normative documentation, such as policies and regulations, such technological changes are captured in user manuals and other communication, and they have become de facto policy and regulation for that functionality, such as asset declaration or public financial management. I would also like to add some of the limitations to my research. As a case study, the findings of this study may not be generalizable to other countries or contexts. In addition, compliance has not been studied adequately as a mechanism to explain the relationship between e-governance and corruption, and therefore, more case studies and evidence would benefit to advance further investigation. Next slide, please. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to receiving your questions, comments, and suggestions in writing via the email or through the conference organizers. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Welcome to my presentation, and I'm Mawazo Magesa from Tanzania. And my presentation is about digital leadership for digital transformation. Earlier it was digital leadership, but to narrow it down, I've added the keyword digital transformation. It means that I'm studying digital leadership, and the context is the digital transformation. And the issue is to study the attributes or characteristics or behaviors that a digital leader should have within an organization to lead the transformation. As we know that currently every organization is shifting to digital technology, and to shift to digital technology, you need a leader who can spearhead such a transformation. A leader should have certain attributes, characteristics, and behaviors. For example, should initiate the project or the process, should manage the process, and also a leader should be able to find the funds, resources, and other things that can help the team to accomplish the task. So he should be able to convince the management about the resources required to accomplish the digital transformation. That was about my study, and to accomplish my study, I conducted a survey using a questionnaire, and I collected some information from several organizations in Tanzania, and based on that information, I used I looked for the correlation between different items. After looking for the correlation, then some items were dropped. Then I conducted the exploratory factor analysis for grouping items which are related, And after grouping those items, then I conducted a confirmatory factor analysis for looking for items which are relevant for a certain aspect. And therefore, I came with a certain conclusion, as you will see in my presentation. Next slide, please. Now let us start with the introduction. And we know that integration of digital technologies into service deliveries into different sectors has resulted into digital transformation. And this digital transformation has changed the way services are delivered in, and how businesses are operated, and how values are delivered to customers. And as of this, different factors are driving organizations to adopt digital transformation. I have listed some examples of the factors. For example, nowadays, hardware and the software are available at low prices. The issue of global connectivity, once you are connected to the internet, it is as if you are connected to the it is as if you are in the village, so you are reached and you can reach everybody. There are also pressures from customers, employees, and the competitors to go to digital technology. And as individuals are increasingly owning these digital technologies and devices, then organizations are pressurized to go to digital technologies. Also, globalization increases competition, and thus puts pressure to companies to go to digital. Next slide, please. Now, what is this digital transformation? According to Gimple and his fellow in 2018, they defined the digital transformation as the ability of an organization to adapt and capitalize the digital technologies to change business models, improve existing work routines, explore new revenue streams, and ensure sustainable value creation. So you can see that within the definition, we improve existing work routines, and also there are opportunities to improve revenue and ensure sustainability for value creation. And it has some positive effects, as you have seen earlier. That is, it improves services deliveries, it encourages teamwork, and improve business revenue. Though there are some major issues which are not reported or are rarely reported. These are project failures. There are scanty and underreported project failures, and these are underreported for commercial reasons. We know the research in emotion, like BlackBerry, and everybody knows how Nokia was a dominant mobile phone maker, but now it has lost the ground. Now, how do we interpret, how does the digital failure, that is failure of this project, interpreted to companies, and companies admiring to shift to digital organization? Actually, they may be threatened. So to champion the digital transformation, we need a leader, a digital leader. So digital transformation requires a digital leader who acknowledges digital transformation as the fundamental strategic paradigm shift, who can spearhead the digital transformation process. Next slide, please. Now, the objective of this study was to examine the characteristics or behavior or attributes of a digital leader necessary to lead the organization to digital transformation. And the ultimate is the success of digital transformation within the organization for its development. That is, if the organization adopts digital transformation, possibly it may lead to its development and the success. But what is this digital leadership? According to El Sao in 2016, he defined the digital leadership as doing the right things for the strategic success of digitization for the enterprise and its business ecosystem. And he differentiated between leadership and management. He said that leadership is about doing the right thing for the success of the organization, and the management about doing the right thing. So we are looking for the digital leadership, and therefore we expect that digital leadership is about doing the right thing for the success of the organization. Next slide, please. Now, the methodology adopted by our study was a quantitative research design, and it involved a self-reported questionnaire completed by respondents drawn from some organizations in Tanzania, and a thorough literature review and exploration on measures of leadership effectiveness from the global survey helped to assess the basic underlying attributes of digital leader and compose the survey questions. And we targeted the organizations with a high degree of digitization, both public and private organizations, which have more than 20 employees and were founded 5 years prior to our study. And the targeted respondents were those in management, senior staff, and normal staff with good knowledge of ICT matters. Next slide, please. Now, the results of our study, let us start with the respondents and their characteristics. We obtained a number of responses, and out of those, we only picked the 212. And out of these, males were dominant 73.1%, as you can see. And based on education level, you can see that those with master's degree were dominant. They are about 46.8%, and those with a doctorate degree were about 40.3%. And based on range, you can see that the majorities had the age between 30 and 50, and they're about 73.3%. And based on work experience, majorities have worked for the same organization for more than 10 years, and they're about 55.4%. And we also questioned them about their leadership. And out of 212, 54.7% were leaders, and they were 116, the majority. And those who attended the leadership training were majority. They are 58.3%. And based on the years of leadership, the majorities had served for 3 to 5 years, and they're about 44.7%. But a little from this information, you can see that as majority has a good level of education, a minimum of bachelor degrees, then they can make a good judgment about the attributes of digital leadership. And also based on age, you can see that the majority were between 30 and 50, so they can judge the attributes of digital leadership well. And based on work experience, those who have worked for many years were men. So again, they can judge the leader attributes well. And based on the leaders, you can see that the majority were leaders, and they have attended the leadership training, so they know how to judge the attributes of a leader. So we expect that they can judge the attributes of a digital leadership well. Next slide, please. Now let us go to the analysis of our results. And first, we examine the intercorrelation among leadership attributes to identify and remove variables which did not correlate with any other variables or correlated highly with other variables. That is, with a correlation greater than 0.9. Based on this one, we dropped the 3 variables due to poor correlation. Thereafter, we conducted the exploratory factor analysis, then we conducted the confirmatory factor analysis, and then we checked for validity. And let us start with the exploratory factor analysis abbreviated by EFA. Now, this one yielded 7 factors with agent values greater than 1, which collectively accounted for 73.75% of the total variance. You can see that the 7 factors explained a greater percentage of the total variance. And all variables were correlated, that is no low correlation, and no higher correlation, that is greater than 0.9. And the KMO which examined the sampling adequacy was found to be 0.69 for the sample. But for the individual variable were 0.50. Now, this confirmed that the exploratory factor analysis used was appropriate for the data. Now, they produced 7 factors for loading items, 2 factors loaded with 1 item each. Remember that the EFA yielded 7 factors. So out of the 7 factors, 2 factors loaded with 1 item each. So all items loaded appropriately as the minimum loading value was 0.3, and this is the minimum loading value which is recommended. And items were grouped into 5 roles. So we grouped the items into 5 roles. Next slide, please. Now you can see now the roles, variables, and their description. As I said earlier, we got 7 factors. Now, the first factor, this one, had 6 variables. You can see these are the 6 variables: convincing, influence, enthusiastic, trustworthy, motivation, and openness. And we grouped them under the role inspirational. And the second factor had 4 variables, and these were grouped under the innovation role. And these variables were anticipatory, digital savvy, risk taker, confidence. And unfortunately, the third factor had a single variable, diplomatic, so it was not grouped. Next slide, please. Now, the fourth factor had 6 variables, and they were grouped under the role observing uncertainty, that is the ability of a digital leader to observe uncertainty. And these variables were sensible, communicative, ability to communicate direction, agile, collaborative, and robust. And thereafter we went to the 51, and this one had 3 variables, and they were grouped under the role adaptation, and the variables were informed, planning, and decisive. Again, the sixth factor, we had a single variable within the 6th factor, so it was not grouped. And the 7th factor had 2 variables, visionary and encouraging, and they are grouped under the role visionary. So from this result, we had a group of 5 roles. The 2 factors, as long as they had 1 variable each, they were not grouped, they were left. Next slide, please. So from the exploratory factor analysis, we got 5 factors. 5 factors out of the 7. We picked out factors out of the 7, and then we went to the confirmatory factor analysis. And with this one, to conduct this analysis, we only included items with the factor loading greater than 0.5, which is the recommended. And all items of the first and the 7th roles were included. Items with the negative correlation in the 4th role, and the first 3 items in the 2nd role were included in the test. So a total of 4 factors, not 5, 4 factors, and 13 items formed a model to be tested. And we tested the model using maximum likelihood estimation with the robust standard error. And we first checked how the model fitted the data using the 6 fit indices listed here. We have CFY, TLY, this RMSA, SRM, RCD, and the relative chi-square. This is therefore helping to calculate this one. Now, from this one, the first 2, CFY and the TLY, these are recommended that they should be greater than 0.995. As you can see, we can say that they are fitting the result. And this one, it is recommended that it should be less than 0.05. So if you approximate this one, you get 0.05. So still it is acceptable. And this one, which is recommended that it should be less than 0.08. So this is acceptable. And this coefficient of determination, this one should be between 0 and 1 inclusive. So it is 1 indicating that it is perfect fit. And the relative chi-square is recommended that it should be less than 2 for acceptable fit. So this value is accepted. So based on these 6 indices, we can say that all indices indicate acceptable fit, and this conclude that the confirmatory factor analysis model provides a better fit for the data we had. And we consider the standardized factor loading and the corresponding p-values. Though the table is not included, it was a very long table, it is in the text. But what we concluded from that data is that the p-values for all the factor loading were below the typical cutoff of 0.05, leading to the rejection of the null hypothesis that the factor loading are equal to 0. So the factor loading were okay. Hence, the factor loadings are statistically significant. Next slide, please.
Magesa, we are running out of time. Can I perhaps ask you to advance to a quick summary of your conclusions and your recommendations, just in 1 minute?
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now, from the conclusion, you can say that we explored the construct of digital leadership, and we used both the EFA and the CFA have proved their usefulness in modeling the attributes of digital leadership and assigning them to roles. And the findings of this study can be used in the organizations while they are assessing the characteristics, behavior, and roles of leaders, especially digital leaders. And organizations can create guidance for appointing and searching leaders based on items in aspect of leadership and the findings of this study. Next slide, please. Now, we recommended further study to be conducted and consider respondents both from public and the private sector, and also gender should also be considered and education level. And where possible, we should consider culture, though culture is very difficult to consider in the matters of leadership. And also, we recommend that we should explore more items that can explain the construct of digital leadership and incorporate them into the study. So with a large sample size, ours was 212. With a large sample size, possibly the EFA can yield more factors with the good factor loading, and thus we can get more items to load or to be included in the CFA model for analysis. And lastly, we recommend that the digital leaders adopt the transformational leadership style, which can inspire positive changes in their followers. Thank you, everybody, for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Mawazo, and your co-author. I think we'll give a moment for a question or a comment from the audience. We unfortunately have not been able to establish a reliable connection with the one more paper we have. So we'll give this one a little bit of airtime for a question or a response if there's anything, and then we'll quickly return to our previous paper. That technical problem has been resolved, so we might have a response opportunity and then a few minutes for us to talk together about next steps. So if you have anything for Mawazo, please, can you raise your hand? In the meantime, may I ask Mawazo, so your final recommendation is about transformational leadership style. And of course, you found that in the Tanzanian context. May I ask, what are you thinking about the generalizability of that leadership style and the wealth of capacity building that has been going on for years in transformational leadership style? How applicable do you think your finding would be to other contexts? Do you think it would help transformational leadership capacity development in order to enhance the capacities of leaders within the digital space?
In Tanzania and possibly other developing countries, we have different styles of leadership. And for example, in Tanzania, you find that leaders and their followers may be different. That is, followers, they don't have a good relationship with the leaders, don't have good relationship with their followers, and so leadership becomes somehow difficult. Possibly you command instead of leading. So that is not a good strategy. That's why we propose the transformational leadership style. That is, you inspire positive changes to those who you are leading. And if this is adopted, that is, transformation leadership is adopted, possibly the members can work as a team, and if they have a task, then they can cooperate to accomplish it. And if that is adopted, possibly it can lead to success. Hope I have responded the way I captured you.
Was posed a little bit earlier by Attica, and the question was about hierarchy. You will be able to recall that within the conference chat. She asked, how does multi-layered leadership differ from hierarchical leadership, and how does it stand out from organic models of leadership? Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much for this pertinent question. The shape that put 4 layers in a triangle doesn't mean that it depicts the current and existing hierarchy. These are just elements which I found emerging from my research. And what is very interesting for me, the leadership in my studies context have 2 dimensions. One is that those people who make a decision will be a leader, and 2, those people who influence the others' opinions and behaviors will be the leaders. So along these 2 lines, I picked up those the elements which came out from the interviews. Now, it is true that the traditional hierarchy, which I call a vertical reporting system, exists. But what is emerging is that in the context of e-governance implementation, those who are making decisions are not necessarily the ministers or secretaries or the higher ups. In fact, they don't have much technical knowledge on what these systems are supposed to do, while these systems perform the core function of the government. One is to keep an eye on the illicit enrichment, and 2, The second one is actually managing the government funds. So if those ministers and secretaries are not the one who are making the decisions, and if those finance officers, and it cuts across the ministries, in fact, the 700 accountants and financial officers are collectively influencing and making a decision on how this system should function and disperse the fund, I believe is a new model. And the same applies to IT officers and HR officers who are managing this online asset declaration systems. So I believe that the dynamics of who makes a decision and who is influencing others to follow, I believe is perhaps evolving and changing. Thank you. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. Yes, I think that was helpful. Okie dokes, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming towards the end of our panel. Our time is just about out. But I wanted to use this moment just to say, how can we continue from this small corpus of work that we've developed today? In that regard, I would just like to say that we're really, really happy and thankful that all the papers in this panel have been developed into full papers, and those ones have been uploaded to the conference website. I include the address for you directly there, but if you go to the panel pages, you'll be able to access and download the full papers for all four our bits in our panel. Unfortunately, the second one in the list have not been able to connect with us today, but it's a certainly interesting paper. I have been in contact with the two authors over there, and their paper is speaking for itself. But please feel free to peruse that one to get another angle on what we are talking about. Now, I must just invite you guys that we are trying to gain momentum in this area of digital development leadership, and given the technical resources and the online nature this time round, as the convening panel. Conveners of our panel, I'd like to just invite you guys, for all our audience members and other interested people, to directly get in touch with myself. My email address is on your screen at the moment, and invite you to just introduce yourself. And what we offer to do is to bring all those who are interested in this area together, and perhaps create a mailing list or some sort of online forum at some point in time in the near future to talk about how do we take this forward? How do we move this to a place, perhaps another more focused webinar of sorts? Perhaps we can move to a journal special issue, and to begin to work together and collaborate on the topic of leadership within the digital paradigm of the development domain. So with that, I think we can draw to a close. Thank you very, very much to all our presenters. I want to thank particularly the conference organizers for helping us, and particularly for one of my colleagues that were helping us in the background to sort all the issues out. Bella, thank you very much for that. And we will now call a close to the panel. I hope you have a lovely rest of the conference and hang out in some of the combined open spaces. Please do get in touch. We are passionate about this area, and really feel that this is going to make a big difference in how we can make the world a better place in time to come through quality digital development leadership. And with that, I close our panel for today, and thank all our participants and our audience.